Hey boys and girls, so another book in our little book series here of things I found I thought may be useful for some of you guys. So this one is all about Performance VW engines number 3. Hot VWs has made 3 of these that I know of. I've had the first one, which was pretty cool. It was made probably back in the very early 90s, and then they made one somewhere around the late 90s, and then this one is the more, of my understanding, the recent one. I'm not sure if they've done another one since. This was made in 2012, and it's kind of neat because it's what it really is. It's a whole bunch of tech articles that they've done over the years, collaborated into a book, and that's kind of good in some ways. If you have just got into Volkswagens and you don't know where those articles are, and you don't have a massive collection of the magazines, you can find it all pretty much in here. So what this book does have is has some really cool stuff that most of us will never have our hands on. Okay, and that's kind of neat. And then it has a couple of engines that you and I and pretty much the majority of people could do, build, buy, and whatever. What it really kind of is not is I wish it would have had, like the first one had, like a bolt-on performance edition in it. I really wish they'd have kept that in here, but they didn't do it this time. Probably because it was pretty much the same stuff they did in the first and the second one. So anyways, on the front here you can see 700 horsepower turbo alcohol Munster. So this book actually has some really cool stuff about that. They actually show the parts and pictures and the pieces and give you some of the explanation of what it goes into one of those motors. They also do have a pro stock motor in here. They also have the dyno challenge they did back in the mid-2000s. I wish they'd do something like this again, but I wish they'd do it a different way. I wish that they'd build a more normal engine. All those motors were pretty much max effort, except for like 1 or 2 of them they actually built for customers and were like, hey, let's throw it in the challenge. But most of those engine shops built max effort motors, and a 10.5 to 1, 600 and some odd lift like CB had cam is just not what most people are going after. I wish they'd do something more like a challenge of 1776 to a 1900cc motor range, and non-welded head 40 by 35 valve, and no more than like a 44 or 40, well, just say 45 so you can get the Delortos in there. A 45 millimeter carb. That to me represents more of what somebody it's wanting more power but wants to be able to drive long distances would have. I wish they'd do something like that. Maybe they have. I haven't had Hot VWs in a little while, so maybe they've done that. They also have in here, they rebuilt a stock motor. Really neat and interesting. That thing, they dynoed it before they ran it, rebuilt it, and then they dynoed it again. I won't tell you what it made after, but I'll tell you this. It made 17.5 horsepower on the dyno the first time, and they said they are driving it daily. So it just goes to show you how much horsepower you really have to get down the road. All right. There is one article in here that I think a lot of you guys would actually like, especially you guys that have watched my video on some of the turbo basic stuff. In this, come on, there it is. This one is, I think it was like a 4 or 5 part series, but it was spread out, and now you can find it all in one area. So this motor made 360 horsepower before they blew it up. Interesting note on that is they damaged it the run before, they just didn't realize it, and you can find that out because they put a different carburetor on it and ran it, and it made less horsepower, and it made less boost. So then they tried to jet it because it was lean, and ran it again, and it cracked a piston. Well, I think the motor was already hurt because it was making less boost, alright, and that's why it was making less horsepower. But it made 360 horsepower that run, and they put new pistons in it, new cylinders in it, and they put the other carburetor they were using on it before back in it, and they started the wick lower. They didn't go for max effort. They went back down to like 18, 20 pounds, and with like 22 pounds or something like that, we're making 300 horsepower, which is really impressive. It's non-welded heads, basically a Engel 120 cam, and it was a 1915 with a, I can't remember if it had an aluminum block. I don't think it even had an aluminum block. I think it was magnesium. So that article right there is worth whatever this is costing. This had, in the summer of 2011, it was $10. I don't think it's $10 anymore. It's probably like almost $20. There's also a Type 4 motor in here. if you want to see that, the whole Jake Raby build that they did back in the mid-2000s is in there. It does have ads in it. It's kind of almost like a magazine. I'll admit that. It's more not like a book. It's the same magazine material as like a magazine would be. And also it has the whole entire series of the Project Blueprint motor. So if you guys are old schoolers and you remember back in the very late, I guess late 90s, they did a series called Engine Blueprinting. And here's the Pro Stock. Right. So they do the Pro Stock motor in there. But right here, Bruce Summer, I think his name is, had this motor built, and he built it over almost like a 2-year period in the magazine. And basically he wanted to show the actual work it goes into blueprinting a motor, not building a motor, blueprinting, where you measure everything, everything's made weight balanced and set up perfectly for what you're building. And it was a really good series on just showing you all the little minute things that people do. Alright? They don't show you how to port the head all the way, but they do show the guy porting the heads and talk about what he's doing and tell you how he's doing the valve job and all that, which gives you an appreciation of the work that goes into something like that. So, if you're out there looking for pretty interesting reading material, this is it. It has some good little engine combinations in there. The Turbo 1915, I think, is worth the price of the book, because that is actually an obtainable motor now. Even when they were building that was probably up on the higher spectrum, but nowadays with the parts that are available and the price of everything, those parts have not changed in the last 10 to 15 years. You can still go out and buy the crankshaft they bought in there for like $300. You can go buy those, the pistons went up, you know, they used to be like $200, but now they're like $400. But you can even buy for the same price, you can buy Wise Coast pistons instead of SEMA mollies, alright? Which back then was like a $200 difference. Now they're almost the same price. You can buy the cylinder heads probably a little bit cheaper. Instead of Los Panchitos would probably flow better than what they did back then, believe it or not. The turbos are probably about the same price still. The carburetors are about the same price. So they show you all the modifications they did to it and how they put it together. And they really neat that Dave Cadwell actually pretty much gave you his combination for a 300 horse motor. So if you're ever thinking about that, I want to build a 300 horse Volkswagen, it's right in here. Okay? So, we'll be doing some more book reviews. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This video ran a little bit long, and let's get out there and get our projects going. And like I say, this gets a pretty good thumbs up. The biggest one in here for me would be the turbo build. I wish it had the bolt-ons, but they don't do the bolt-ons this time. That actually is in the first version of this book. So I'll see you guys later, and get out there and work on your projects.